Hey guys, because Brexit supporters can't seem to come up with any real benefits of being outside the EU, they fall back to vague terms such as sovereignty and democracy. Which is a problem because unless you want to copy North Korea, you can never be fully sovereign, as you will always be part of some international organisation. And second, the same people who were demanding that democracy be respected are telling the British people that they can't have another referendum to rejoin the EU, and are usually the same individuals who will tell the Scots to put up and shut up. One such charlatan, a former advisor to Nigel Farage, appeared on LBC where he tried to sell his snake oil.
To me, it's about democracy. That's why I was involved. You can sack the boss. To go into dynamic alignment, as Starmer's just done with on a whole series of policies, means that we don't get to decide what happens to us. That, to me, is wrong. Wrong.
Oh my goodness. Okay, we have to explain dynamic alignment once again, because these people don't seem to understand it. Dynamic alignment means that when the EU changes its rules, the UK follows. Now, what's the advantage of that? Well, the advantage is that, well, UK businesses have stability. They know when the standards change in the EU that they will change automatically in the UK. That's a benefit for businesses. It's a benefit for traders. Now, of course, Brexit supporters will say, no, this is terrible. We should be making our own rules. But if you make your own rules and have your own standards, then it's going to be more difficult, more bureaucracy, more paperwork, the very thing that these people sold Brexit on removing. You'll have more of that to sell your goods into the biggest market for the UK, which of course is the European Union. So dynamic alignment removes the uncertainty. It helps streamline the process. Now, the Brexiteers will say, no, that's a bad thing, because we're a rule taker then. Yes, but the UK is already a rule taker. The only way to be a rule maker is to be a member of the European Union. But these people don't want the UK to be a member, and they don't even want to have another referendum to give people the choice. They're just charlatans.
But if we get to decide what happens to us, but we decide it in the way that North Korea does, for instance, we end up being poorer, what's the point? I mean...
Hold on. Are you saying that democracy...
I'm saying democracy is great, but we also want to have prosperity.
Yes, of course we do. But the whole point is, and to me the whole point was, if the country had wanted to vote for Corbyn, it could. And
But people could vote for Corbyn. People did vote for Corbyn. What the hell is this guy talking about? Like, what he's trying to sell is, well, look, at least we can decide our Prime Minister if we're no longer a member of the European Union. But the UK has decided its Prime Minister since there were Prime Ministers, while it was before it joined the European Union, and while it was a member of the European Union, it decided its Prime Ministers. Now, what of course he's trying to suggest is that, well, it's not the Prime Minister who makes the ultimate decision. But the UK is a member of international organisations. It has to respect the conditions. See, the Brexiteers only focus on the EU. They don't talk about NATO. They don't talk about the United Nations. They don't talk about other international organisations that the UK is signed up to. The UK can break the rules. And when it was a member of the European Union, it broke the rules. But if you break the rules, there are consequences. Now, it's also ironic that these people are talking about democracy when there was a call for a second referendum and they said no. I bet if you were to ask this guy, should the British people be allowed to vote again to rejoin the European Union? And he would say no. So he's pretending to care about democracy. He doesn't give a crap about democracy. The same when it comes to Scotland. Reform UK have said that they would block any second referendum on Scottish independence. Not that they would support the Union. No, that they would block a second referendum. These people don't care about democracy. They pretend to.
Better to be free from Brussels and poor than to be slightly less free of Brussels but more prosperous.
Better to be free, to make our own decisions, and when our politicians get it wrong...
They call it free. See, the problem with all of this discussion is that this guy will never be impacted by Brexit. He probably has a European passport. You know, these people are not running small businesses. They keep complaining about how the Labour government have no business experience. These people have never run small businesses where they have to export into the single market. They will never be impacted by this. They will not be trying to get access to workers from abroad. They don't care.
To be able to sack them, yes.
But you can do that.
You can't. No, you can't, because if whilst a member of the European Union, you do not make the final decision. Foreign court
Well, it's
makes
a collective.
decisions.
You're talking about politicians being sacked, prime ministers being removed, and you keep coming back to this, well, we can't sack them. Boris Johnson was sacked. Liz Truss was sacked. Rishi Sunak was sacked. What the hell is this guy talking about?
The thing, isn't it? I mean,
Yes, but it's not us. It's not democracy.
well, it's diluted, right? It's diluted.
Sovereignty is the zero-sum game. You've got it or you're not.
But
It's
we,
like
Then I presume you want to leave the United Nations, although this is Reform UK, so probably yes. Do you want to leave the World Trade Organization? The WTO? Any organization that the UK has signed up to, it surrenders a certain amount of sovereignty. Because you sign up to that international organization, you follow their rules. Is this guy talking about leaving CTPPP? No. The Brexiteers seem to support it.
like
but
virginity.
but hang on a second. So, there is no such thing as pure sovereignty. We're finding that out with Donald Trump at the moment.
But we can make decisions about how to respond to things. We can't do that as a member of the European Union.
But you're in a weaker position now. But as Matt has said here, you're finding out the limits of sovereignty because Donald Trump is saying, well, you need to follow my rules. As we keep saying, if you want to sell into the US market, you have to follow the US's rules. You can't say, well, I'm going to make my own rules. This is what the Brexiteers are trying to sell. They understand that if you want to sell to the US, you have to follow their rules. But they don't like the idea of following European rules for some reason.
But those decisions have costs, don't they?
Of course, but
we can
all
decide to
decisions
turn
in
our
life
backs
have
on.
costs.
Well, exactly. So we can
If
decide to
I
turn our
walk out
backs
my
on
front
Donald.
door-
We can turn our back on Donald Trump, and say we don't need a trade deal with the US because they're being far too mercurial about it all. But we're going to be poorer as a result. Are we
That is our
prepared to do that?
decision. If I walk out my front door, I
Well,
can turn left or I turn right. If I go left, I
we
go to the-
decided to leave the European Union. That was our decision.
Precisely.
But was it the wise decision?
I believe so, because
Right.
it gives us those freedoms and liberties.
What freedoms and what liberties? We keep coming back to this. Freedoms and liberties. You can't come up with any examples apart from, well, we're able to hit ourselves over the head with a rusty old frying pan. That's the freedom, to be poorer. But once again, these people don't have a problem with Britain being poorer because they will not be impacted. They're making decisions that will impact other people. When they push back against dynamic alignment, for example, which would help British businesses, when they're pushing back, they're creating problems for British businesses. They're not interested in streamlining, cutting red tape. It's just a political decision. They don't understand free trade, or they pretend not to. And once again, I don't know which is worse. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.